Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to one of my colouring tutorials. In this tutorial I'll be working with a design from one of my favourite artists, and it's Nadiya Vasilkova, and the design is from a Magic Stippling book. And she does artwork that is mostly built up by pointillism shading, and always find these a little bit of a challenge, but also so satisfying when you get them finished because they're so nice and such beautiful artwork. I really do like her imagination. So I will be working on Castle Art pencils as well, which is a mid-range budget pencil, to see how it works with this design. Now this is the design I'm going to be working on to do the tutorial. It's a lovely, elegant wildcat design. I don't know what breed it is, but it just looks stunning. And I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but the points work in clusters. So the darker the shading, the more points there are. And that's to guide you with your shading. I just find it such a lovely way to do art. It's so nice, and especially when you come to finish this kind of project. So Castle Art pencils, I'm using the 120 set, so some of the colours I am using will not be in the 72 set. I'm using a yellow 004, that's for my lightest colour. Like a golden brown 010, a medium brown, what they call raw umber, which is 116, and a dark brown, which is 68. Now I've noticed with the 72 set with these pencils, they don't have names on, but the 120 do, which is quite nice. So, as with all my colouring, I always start with my lightest sections. It's just my choice. I just find it easier because I can extend it better. If I get dark colours down, it's very easy, hard to get them off the page. Light pressure and practically just skimming the paper. And this book I'm working in is the Amazon print paper, so it's quite thin. See how this works. I'm just going to be working on the lightest sections first. I'm not going to be colouring in the whiskers. I'll try and avoid those. I'm going to do those in a different colour, so they'll stand out from the body. So I'm doing all the light sections in this lovely medium yellow. I'm now going to work with my golden brown, and I'm going to be going a little bit over some parts of the yellow lighter sections I put in, because the shading or the dots bleed into those areas. So I'm just going to be slightly overlapping. Because the way the dots are being put down, sometimes they're actually moving in, like this section here, moving into the lighter sections. So I will be extending into the lighter sections of parts. When I'm doing this kind of design, it feels almost like I'm working out a puzzle. And I kind of like that. That's the challenge for me. Now, as I'm working through, if I feel that I've maybe missed some of the lighter sections, I should have had more yellow down, I will put them down as I go along. I'm also going to be avoiding the really dark sections of dots, because that will be the darker colours, and I don't want to lighten up those areas too much with this light brown. So I'm just going into the sections that are lighter shaded with the lighter clusters of dots. I hope that makes sense. It's because of the effect I'm trying to create. And if I go into the darker sections with the light colour, it's going to darken up, lighten up those sections, and I don't want that. I want them to be quite dark and a good contrast. And now I've got the golden brown down, I'm going to be using a medium brown. It's named Raw Umber, and it's slightly darker than the colour I've just put down. And I'm going to be concentrating on the darker sections now and use this colour to go over all of the dark sections. It will overlap slightly into the medium or light brown I just put down, but generally now I'm just going over all the dark sections. Hoping to create a nice gradient effect with this. Generally, when I'm doing these kind of designs, I just go from dark into light quite quickly, but I'm just trying something slightly different with this one. Now as I'm going along, I'm noticing sections I feel I want to darken in with the lighter brown. And this is generally, you know, something that always happens because I tend to be quite cautious at first when I'm doing my first layers, and I can adjust it as I go along. So there are sections I'd left because I wasn't really sure what colour they should be, and as I go along with my darker brown, I'll be filling those in as well. This kind of design takes a long time, I think partly because of that, but I do enjoy the process of working with this kind of design. It's more of a challenge, and I get a really nice satisfying feeling when I've finished something like this. Now I'm going to be working with my darkest brown for this design, and I'm going to be overlaying some of the previous brown I've put down in the darkest clusters of the dots. Now my colouring style for me is slowly building things up, and I feel for me that's great for pencils. and get a better effect, a more satisfying effect. So my colouring projects tend to look quite sketchy for quite a while before I get to a point where it looks, you know, tidier and more complete. And I personally like this way of doing my colouring because I feel that it builds it up. I get more engrossed in what I'm doing. And I'm trying to, you know, justify the lovely artwork I'm working with because it's so nice. I mean, I work with so many nice pieces of art, and I want to keep, you know, that lovely style. So I do try and take a bit of time and be quite cautious when I'm putting down my layers. So yes, I'm sure when anybody's watching this, they'll think, oh, wait a minute, Edith, you've done most of the colouring off camera. But the first few layers, I'm just giving people an idea of what I do because it's just repetitive after that. I go over and over the same areas in the same ways to build up the colour, to eventually it doesn't look so sketchy. Now I've put down the first layers for each of those colours and it needs more layers. And so I'm going to do those off camera and come back to these. I think it's going to look quite interesting with that gradient effect, the darker and then medium dark and then light brown and then into the yellow. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So when I've got a few layers down, I will come back to this and we'll see how it goes. I've put a few layers down of each of those colours I was working with, about 4 layers of each. And now I'm thinking about doing a blend. Now I always find doing blends with this kind of design difficult. If I use a blender pencil, what tends to happen is if you've got quite contrast, you know, big jumps in colours, shades of colours, it pushes the dark too much into the lighter sections. So I'm going to do 2 blends, and I've done part of this already. So the golden lightest brown, I'm using that to go over the darkest sections, just to blend those colours. It will lighten them, but it doesn't push them into the lightest sections too much. I'm using mostly circular movements just to smooth out those darker sections. And now I'm going to use the lightest colour I was doing for the highlights, which is the yellow, and I'm going to be going over all the yellow sections, but also just slightly overlapping into the lightest brown. And I also noticed I coloured the whiskers in because I was getting a bit confused as to where the whiskers were because they're such fine lines, so I coloured those in so I knew where they were. Didn't realise that that would be a problem until I started doing more layers. So like I did with the lightest brown over the darker areas, I've gone over the lightest brown areas with the yellow, so it just lightens it up a little bit, but it also helps to blend those areas. Now, I've still got all of this to do, but I won't do this on camera, just to give you an idea how I'm going to be doing the rest of it. But I want to try something while I'm doing this. I want to try using a dry cotton bud, not with anything on it, just to do a little bit of a light blend with just the cotton bud on its own. And it is working a little bit because you can see the colour on the cotton bud. No, I think it has blended it a little bit more, and it's a very subtle, soft effect. And it's not bleeding too much from the dark into the light, so that's quite good, that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the yellow over the yellow areas and the lightest brown, and then I'm going to keep blending with the cotton bud and come back to this. I'll put the yellow down over the lightest brown to blend that a little bit, and then I went over all of it with a dry cotton bud to blend it a little bit more. And it's a soft effect, it doesn't blend like solution or a blender pencil, but it's enough to soften up some of those lines. It's a nice gentle effect. One of the reasons I've done that as well is because this paper, I've noticed, because this is Amazon paper, it has grayscale on, and sometimes with the lines it can bleed if I use solutions, or even a blender pencil, so I have to be quite careful with these kind of designs when I come to blend them in these in these printed books. However, that kind of soft blending with a dry cotton bud has worked quite nicely. And I'm not going to do the eyes and the nose. I'm not 100% sure what colours I'm going to do the eyes yet. And the nose will probably be similar pinks to the whiskers. So I'm just going to do the main body of the cat in this demonstration. And I'm really pleased with that. The gradient effect worked quite nicely. And I could go actually a bit darker if I wanted to spend even more time on it. But I think for now that's just fine. So I hope anybody who's watched this has found this really useful. And if you're trying to work with this kind of design, it's giving you some ideas and tips on how to do use more than one colour or even two colours, and also to do a little bit of blending. So I'll say bye for now, and I'll return soon with a different tutorial.